I'm Bill O'Reilly in the Personal Story segment tonight. A new study by the National Center on Addiction and Substance Abuse at Columbia University has some interesting findings. Also, the sex and eating habits of some Americans may have been influenced by the 9/11 terror attack. Joining us now from Boston is Dr. Arthur Ciaramicoli, a clinical psychologist at the Harvard Medical School and author of the book, The Power of Empathy. Ciaramicoli, what about the sex and booze situation?
Well,
the drugs and booze situation.
People, Bill, are definitely using more alcohol, other drugs, and also eating disorders are on the increase. The most interesting dynamic, however, is that people who don't normally have that propensity are also developing those addictions. And I think the main factor here is that if Americans are facing their own mortality, and that means they have to question the meaning of their existence, which we normally avoid. I mean, America sort of, after September 11th, awakened to the desire for more intimacy, better relationships, and a higher purpose in life. And I think that's exactly what we saw at Ground Zero. We saw empathy in action at Ground Zero.
Okay, but if that's true, if they want a better quality of life and more intimacy, why would they take booze and drugs? Because that is the enemy of intimacy.
Because people with addictions are addicted. They're in a relationship to that drug or that food substance or whatever particular obsessive activity, even if it's their own body. That's what they're in love with, in a sense. They're preoccupied with that entity as much as people who are in love are preoccupied with their lover all day long. They think about their lover all day long. People who have addictions don't know how to form those quality relationships. The people at Ground Zero taught us that. They showed that their propensity, their fear of mortality was overcome by their drive toward being empathic. They really were really moving to a higher level function. And that showed us that this kind of attachment is what it gets us through trauma. People who are addicted and have a propensity toward addictions don't know how to form those close bonds. And what we know from close bonds and empathic connections is it does change your brain waves. It does change your neurochemistry.
How much does fear play into the fact that people want to get loaded and run away from reality? Is there any of that because the Center for Substance Addiction is showing about a 13% rise in illegal drug use across the country. Is it escapism?
All addictions are avoidance, Bill. It is escapism in a sense, but let's face it, we were all traumatized by this event. 71% of Americans a week later said they were depressed. That doesn't mean that all people are clinically depressed. And suffering isn't necessarily pathological. You know, we can turn this suffering into a positive event, into an opportunity to change our perspective and to gain more insight into our relationships and into our culture.
Sure, anybody can do that if they want to, but the easy way is just take some dope and booze. I do believe that there's a fear in the country now, Dr. I know I'm going to get your name wrong here. I got it right twice, Ciaramicoli. I know there's a fear in the country, and that some people, the weaker among us, and I hate to say it, but I believe that firmly, are just saying, hey, to hell with it. You know, if I want to get fat, I'm going to get fat. If I want to get blasted, I'm going to get blasted. I want to use heroin, I'm going to use heroin, because nobody can protect me. I might get an anthrax letter. But that's more of an excuse than anything else, is it not?
Well, it's very difficult in the sense that, yes, it can seem like an excuse, but for people who have a fragile sense of self and have used addictive substances all their life to cope, including food, because we do take in more sugar and carbohydrates because it produces serotonin in the brain. That's what Prozac and Zoloft, these antidepressant medications, produce. So we use that for comfort, but if people are accustomed to that, they don't understand that the best way that you can regulate your brain is through relationships. Relationships are a physiological process. We change our brain chemistry by the way we relate. And if we use empathy to know who to relate to and who to get close to, we will preserve our sense of self and also preserve our brain capacity and produce a feeling where we feel connected to others and we're understood by others, and we'll get through this.
If it's done with discipline and planning. Right. You know, just don't go to Vegas with Lenny and you met him yesterday, okay? Doctors, thanks very much. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Bill.